Hello, everyone. Welcome into our Marlow's matchup. My name is Brandon Adams. This is the former UGA All-American John Stinchcomb looking ahead to the game against the Kentucky Wildcats and doing it in style tonight here on the beautiful patio, enjoying some fabulous weather at the Marlow's Tavern in Dunwoody. So if you're in and around the area, come on by and see us here on Dunwoody Village Parkway in the Dunwoody Village Shopping Center. Great chance for you to hang out and talk some dogs with us. We'll be here tonight till 8 p.m. And John, you and I have already had a chance to talk to so many people tonight and kind of the precursor to the actual event starting. And there's really only one topic on anyone's mind right now. It's how does Georgia get back on track? Offense in particular, how does it get going? And we understand that. I mean, listen, you've done this as a player. I've done this as a fan for decades. There's obviously such great passion and such great desire to see Georgia break through at the highest level. And I think you and I both would say that this Georgia team still has a very good chance of accomplishing that, getting that done this year. But when there is the loss, that same passion then becomes, in some cases, curiosity, maybe in some cases a word that's even stronger than that of what's wrong, what's going on right now. And so, John, I think this week at Dog Nation, your appearance on Dog Nation Daily, you being here tonight, all the things that we're doing, I think we're all trying to do our part right now to answer that question of, okay, so what is wrong with Georgia? How easily can it be fixed? And where exactly do the Dogs go from here?
You know, it's funny, Coach Payton, head coach of the New Orleans Saints, he used to come in and, especially after a loss or even big wins when you're on a streak, he would quote Bill Parcells and say, it's either a crisis or a carnival, meaning, you know, there's never in the middle, right?
That's a really good line.
And that's where we are. I mean, it was an ugly game that played out the only way that, in my opinion, South Carolina becomes a victor is with 4 turnovers and a missed field goal and a blocked field goal. That's the only way they win that game, and that's how it played out. So is there places where you can clean up? Without a doubt. I mean, there's many things that the offense can do better across the board, but there wasn't one single entity that you say, boy, that weakness was so glaring that it's going to be a real challenge for this team to recover for the rest of this year.
So there's one thing in particular I want to talk to you about, and then we'll kind of get going with some comments here live on video, and then we'll do some comments with the folks who've gathered here at the Marlows and Dunwoody be with us tonight. This comes from DeAndre Swift here this week, and you can go to our Dog Nation YouTube page. You can see the full interview that Dog Nation and other UJ reporters were able to have with Swift this week, and he was quite outspoken during that interview about what he thinks that Georgia needs to do better. There's one quote in particular, John, I want to read this to you, and for the folks watching on video, you'll be able to see this on your screen. Here's DeAndre Swift, who says, I think we need to take more shots downfield and try to get the ball to our playmakers in space. I think we need to do a better job of that. Now, in this interview, in the video that we have, is like 5 minutes long, Swift talks plenty about taking responsibility for his own role in this and talks plenty about wanting to do exactly what the coaches need for him to do and supporting his teammates. This isn't Swift calling anybody out. This isn't Swift necessarily calling out his own coaches here because he's taken plenty of responsibility in the midst of this entire discussion. But when you hear a player like that so different from what we normally hear from Georgia players, kind of very much towing the company line, very careful about what they say, for Swift to come out and say some of the things the fans think they need to see more of, I kind of want to see more of that too. As a former player, what do you make of a player being as outspoken, unusually outspoken, I would say, that Swift is in the comment that I just read to you?
Well, what I hear is we didn't have any big plays, and he's right. I mean, whether it was the run game or the pass game, you look for the breakout plays, the runs over 12 yards. We didn't have very many of those on Saturday. And then the big chunk plays in the pass game. That's really what he's speaking to.
Yeah.
We didn't get any of that. We didn't have the over-the-top, stretch the defense, make the safeties play deep. South Carolina was able to basically rush their 4, play some press man on the edges or just man with 2 free over top and sit back and challenge Georgia to take what was in the middle. And we didn't execute well in taking those opportunities for the chunk play. So when DeAndre Swift mentions that, he's speaking to facts. I mean, it's not calling anybody out. There wasn't big chunk plays.
Yeah, one of the things that also kind of comes to mind for me after something like that is it's an unusual response to an unusual situation. We've seen Georgia the last 2 years dominating almost every regular season opponent it's played, and certainly it's SEC East competition when it doesn't go that way on Saturday. And obviously the 4 turnovers hang over the head as a huge part of all of this. But in addition to that, there was more that Georgia could have done that it didn't do on Saturday. it is to me a little bit of an unusual response. And maybe, I'm not in locker rooms, at least in terms of, when the players are in there. I'm not behind closed doors with the program. But maybe kind of an unusual response, kind of draw a line in the sand. I want this to be different. Maybe that's what this team needs right now. I think back to 2016 when Nick Chubb and Sonny Michel, the legend has it, went into Jim Chaney's office and said, we don't like how we're being used. We'd like to be used differently, and things changed for them after that season and changed dramatically in 2017 when they were the hallmark of a playoff appearance. I don't have a problem with Swift speaking out. I frankly think someone needs to say what he said there. And I guess your hope is, and this is the only thing you can hope if you're a fan, is that Swift, because of his play on the field, because of his willingness to speak up in this moment, that it becomes the kind of galvanizing event that this team can rally around, and Swift can actually lead them forward in that regard.
You know what I like most about his comments is that he's a leader speaking not selfishly. It's not, I need the ball more, I need to create more plays, they need to create more opportunities for me. What he's saying is, we've got so many playmakers here, we need to try to create opportunities for them to make the big catches over the top and stretch the defense, and talking about what's best for the team. I love that. I love the fact that what he's saying is, as a team, we can do so much more. As an offense, we can attack defenses and put them on their heels if we're able to create opportunities for our playmakers to make plays, and wasn't, I'm the best running back in the country, which he could say, and I need to get the ball more. He's never once said that. What he's saying is, let's create more opportunities to make plays as an offense. I love it.
So let me ask you this. In your career, whether it be the NFL, college, whenever, when a loss is suffered, especially one that's as disappointing as this one is when you're a big favorite, you're kind of upset in your own stadium, what's the proper response? Is it, I'm going to throw a chair, I'm so mad, I'm going to knock over a table, I'm so mad, I'm going to put my fist through a wall? Is it, well, it's time to be more measured and controlled and, make sure we're buttoned up, polished, and whatever else, focused, I guess is the better way to say that? Is it to be more emotional or less emotional after Georgia dealt with what it dealt with on Saturday?
I think it depends on the locker room that you've got. And I think that there's a mature locker room in Athens right now. You've got good leadership, and you slipped, right? You've fallen to a team that you shouldn't have, and you rallied. The number one thing that you do when you've got maturity is you insulate yourself. You rely on the guys in that room, the coaches, the players that put in the work, that week in, week out, you count on to make the difference. You don't listen to the folks, whether you're riding high and you've come off a couple big wins, or you suffer a loss like they did against South Carolina. You insulate the room. You listen to the people whose voices matter, unlike this guy, and rely on what you can do to get better. So I think they've got the maturity to focus in on the details. There's plays they left. There's opportunities they missed. Very simple things that they can do better, and they're aware of it. So you go back to work, you put your nose to the grindstone, and you rely on the men in the room that you've trusted to get you to this point, and that will carry you past it.
Let me get a few comments on this subject. Then I want to show you something else that DeAndre Swift also had to say this week. Marcinio Askew says that Swift here is saying that the coaches need to call better plays. In a roundabout way, that's what I also think Swift is saying here too. But I think the point that you're making, and I agree with you on this, is he's making that point without making it so egregiously that it becomes a problem. It's okay to be mad. I mean, you want a competitor to be mad after a game like that. And it's okay for a guy like Swift who's putting his life on the line, blood, sweat, and tears on this field every single Saturday. It's okay for him to have an opinion. I think Swift does a pretty good job of threading the needle here, saying, yeah, we do need to get playmakers, and admittedly Swift is one of those playmakers. We need to get playmakers more involved in space, that he's saying, but he doesn't say it in such a way that it becomes a problem, right? You can't pin any selfishness on him. This is just a good player, fully committed to this team, who's also choosing to be a bit more outspoken than we're used to hearing in this moment.
And I appreciate that. I think that's an accurate comment, that he is saying we don't get to call plays. There's only one play caller in Georgia's team, and that's Coley. So what he's saying is, can we create more opportunities? We'd like to see it. Of course, we all would. Now, DeAndre nor any of us know everything that goes into this game plan. And when you've rotated personnel like you have in the offensive line, especially in that second half, there might be some concern as to what plays you're willing to call and the positions you're going to put your team in based on the personnel that you can deploy.
Willie Lay on Facebook says, I'm glad he spoke up and said something. Leadership at its finest, 7 era, go Dogs. And as far as the notion of leadership at its finest, the other thing that Swift said in the same interview, and if you haven't seen it on our Dog Nation YouTube page, first of all, you should subscribe to Dog Nation on YouTube. Nearly 14,000 people have. And in addition to that, while you're there, watch all these post-practice interviews and post-game interviews. It's a great way to keep up with what the team is saying in kind of an unfiltered fashion. But Swift was asked, Smart had said that a lot of players had come up to me after Saturday and saying, Coach, we're ready to get back to work during practice. What do we need to be doing? Kind of facilitating that conversation on his own. Swift said he was one of the guys that did that. So for the commenter who says that these words from Swift go along with the leadership that he's already showing, we've got more evidence of that. The fact that Swift was, at least according to his own account, among the ones that were the most chomping at the bit to get back to practice and get back to work to fix what they didn't like about this past Saturday.
Well, I think this game was not an exposure that Georgia is a fraud. Georgia is not a fraud. Georgia has the talent. They've got the horses on both sides of the ball. They just slipped. The offense didn't perform well. You can't pin it on one guy. There was a number of plays they left on the field, and it turned into a game that they didn't want to find themselves in, where you didn't manage the 2-minute well. All of a sudden, you're down by 7 because you give up a pick 6. I mean, it did not play well for them, but it was an exposure. I mean, there's a lot of teams out there that I think their record's not an indicator, a good indicator of the quality of team that they have. Georgia's got a good team. They slipped.
Charles Kaiser on Facebook also brings up something kind of going along with this. Getting playmakers in space, that would seem to also involve toss sweeps, which Georgia doesn't do at all anymore, at least seemingly. And I'm asking a legitimate question, not a sarcastic question. As an offensive lineman, you were a tackle. You would have certainly been part of protecting for a toss sweep, setting the edge over there. Why doesn't Georgia do that? Do you have a football reason why Georgia doesn't do that more?
Here's what I saw. I went back and watched the game. Sadly, I've watched it 3 times and went back to just kind of review the tape so that I can give some sort of educated response to questions like this. There were 4 offensive runs that were called that were not some version of an inside one-back run. And what I mean by that is between the tackles, what's called, and it's zone, there's nobody pulling. There was no toss sweep. There's not truck, taxi, plays where the tackle gets outside. There wasn't counter or power where a guard pulls and crosses the center. The only outside sweep, outside zone concept that we saw happened one time, and that was with James Cook, something that you probably expect as a defense when you see Cook lined up next to your quarterback in shotgun formation. You're not going to see it between the tackles.
I'm no X's and O's expert, but probably my favorite play that Georgia has run in the entirety of the Kirby Smart era was the touchdown that Nick Chubb scored to kind of put the North Carolina game on ice in 2016, because it was the classic example of that kind of crack back block from a wide receiver where he sneaks over and pops a defensive end, tackle rolls out, and just absolutely mauls a defensive back. And it seems like even that's gone. And part of the reason why Georgia seemingly uses these bunch formations as much as it does is so the receivers can do some crackdown blocking. We don't even see that, at least in my eyes, and I'm not watching probably the film as close as you are, nor would I recognize as much as you would, but it seems like even that we're not seeing as much as we used to.
Well, we definitely didn't see it in South Carolina. South Carolina was a between-the-tackles, inside zone called game, and I don't know whether it was because of the personnel, whether you had Justin Schaefer go down, you bring in Solomon Kinley, who was immobile because of his injury, he still wasn't 100%, you rolled the guards in, or, and Kirby mentions this, they were fairly efficient, is the word he's using, with the plays that they call. They're big horses. Everybody keeps talking about their line averages more than what an offensive line in the NFL does, height and weight-wise. Well, the expectation is, and the play calling is different. I mean, the NFL is a passing league. Georgia plans to get behind those big old hogs and impart their will on a defense. And efficiently, they were able to do that. They were in manageable second down situations and better third down situations, but there were no big breakout plays, which I think is the comment that most fans are making is, it's kind of that old 3 yards in a cloud of dust in an updated fashion of staying inside zone.
One more message from DeAndre Swift. This one came from his Instagram feed, and I think this is kind of an appropriate message. Dog fans certainly like the idea of rallying behind this, and I'll show you this on the screen. He said, "For those that have counted us out, they can't count." And you love the idea that even though no dog fan wants to endure the loss that happened against South Carolina, the opportunity to rally around each other, trust each other, build a new level of connection with each other, there is some value to that. And now I would never say, well, get yourself a loss so you can do all that kind of stuff. No one would feel that way. But the kinds of stuff that happens after you've been tested, Kirby said it a million times, after adversity strikes, there is some value to that. And I don't want to make too much of an Instagram post, but it's sentiments like that expressed in real life that I do think are where growth can happen.
Well, this is a talented team. Let's go back to that. It's not an exposure. They didn't perform well, and they can all own it. Now, they go back to the drawing board, and there's a lot of good teams left on this calendar that they're going to face. But the focus is there. There's opportunity to improve across the board. The receivers can get a little more separation. The coaches can call a different package to where they are creating a little more playmaker in space opportunities for the guys with the ball, and just pure execution. I mean, how many games do you expect for there to be a blocked field goal and a miss by Rodrigo Blankenship, one of the most consistent kickers to ever play in our conference, much less wear red and black? So it was a unique game, and I'm glad it should be an anomaly.
We've got some more time on video. We're going to take a lot of your comments on both Facebook and YouTube. You're watching our Marlow's matchup. This is the former Georgia All-American John Stinchcomb. I always love every chance I get to talk football with him and enjoy that chance with you as well. Tonight we're doing it live in person, the Marlows in Dunwoody, and John said this before the show began. You couldn't ask for better patio weather than we have right now. I'm a big fan of the fall. I like it when I can wear my long sleeves, start wearing my pullovers, and just kind of enjoy the fall season. It's here. It's happening right now. And when I think of enjoying this time in the fall, I think about being out here on the back deck at Marlow's Tavern, enjoying the chef-inspired food, the craft cocktails, just really relaxing and taking advantage of what I think is just a great season here in the state of Georgia, in the Atlanta area where we are. And if you couldn't be with us live tonight here at the Marlows in Dunwoody, I hate it for you because we're having a great time. We're going to have even more fun as we kind of hang out and do a Q&A with the folks who are here coming up a little bit later on. By the way, if you'd like to experience this for yourself, there's a big event taking place at the Marlows in Dunwoody this weekend. It's the Dunwoody Community Tailgate. Marlow's Tavern kind of partnering with some of its neighbors here in this community to have a big thing going on Saturday from 1 p.m. to 11 p.m. So really pretty much all throughout the day and night on Saturday. This is a rain or shine type thing. Coming out here and enjoying games on the big screen, outdoor bar, and you kind of had me at hello when you mentioned that. A special tailgate menu, lawn games, DJ. It's a huge, huge party. You know, this is a great community in this area, and the Dunwoody Village, kind of where Marlow's Tavern is located, is kind of the anchor, the epicenter of all this. And on Saturday, they're going to be hosting a huge party for everybody around the neighborhood, the community, and Marlow's Tavern is going to be a big part of all of that. So come over here and see them on Saturday if you could not be with us tonight. With that said, John, if you don't mind, let's roll through here and talk about a lot more of the comments. Noel Nation, ironically a little bit of a Seminole fan maybe in our YouTube comment section, says Georgia's still going to have a good season. And listen, I think one way or another, there is still a pocket of optimism for Georgia fans. But, John, I wrote about this on Sunday. What is maybe frustrating for some is I couldn't tell you right now if winning the rest of the regular season games is the more likely outcome by a 51% majority, or if it's losing one more time before the season's done. I think both scenarios are on the table. There's no denying that Georgia's got the talent to win every game that it has. If you force me to pick one or the other, that's the pick that I will make. But we're entering into a situation with Kentucky on Saturday and then the games that come in the month of November where you can't say with a certainty what the outcome is going to be. Whereas before the South Carolina game, I would have told you with probably too much certainty, oh, yeah, Georgia over South Carolina, that's 21 points easy. Kentucky, maybe even more than that. I would have been maybe way more certain than I could have been or should have been. That's what the South Carolina result does, is it changes the level of confidence a lot of UGA fans are going to have about just how easy a lot of these remaining games are going to be.
And rightfully so. I think the expectations were exceptionally high. I'm guilty of it myself. You look at before the Notre Dame game, I mean, everybody was projecting that to be a blowout. These aren't blowouts. I think Georgia is a very talented team, and the expectation, the bar has been raised consistently by Dog Nation. We expect to be playing for national championships and be one of the 4 teams almost on an annual basis now. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that we're in that conversation and having those conversations. But when you have one loss, all of a sudden it's like, well, there goes our hopes and dreams,
Yeah.
just because that's where the bar has been raised.
Let me talk about the defensive side of the ball here for a moment, because Janice Green mentions Tyler Clark, who had some big plays in this game on Saturday. When you think about what he's giving Georgia right now, when you think about what Nolan Smith came very close to giving Georgia, really chasing down Decrion Joyner pretty late here in this game, I think you see a defense for Georgia right now that's truly close to breaking out. Now, it's been very good at limiting points. I think in terms of the disruptive, we talk about explosive plays on offense. There's the disruptive stuff on defense that you hope to see a little bit more of. But this group is also close to being able to provide that. And as Janice mentions, Tyler Clark's one of those guys. In a week in which Georgia fans are obsessed with what the offense is not doing, and obviously rightly so, there is certainly something to be said for the fact that the defense is seemingly going to give Georgia a chance to win every game that's going to play. And as Nolan gets a little bit more seasoned and Tyler Clark keeps doing what he's doing and Tyson Campbell comes back to full health, the Georgia defense being as disruptive as we'd like for it to be, that becomes a lot more likely to be a big storyline in the remaining games of the regular season as well.
I think a healthy Tyson Campbell is a big factor for this defense. They're playing at a high level. You take out the one out and up that they hit with one of the best wide receivers in the SEC against Wilson, and who's in man coverage, and he finds the little space between Wilson and LeCount. That was the marquee play for that offense. Other than that, South Carolina played their pin and pull offense where it was they didn't give a lot of opportunities for the defense. The reason why that turnover margin ended up 4-0 is because South Carolina was extremely conservative, knowing that they were playing in a game where it's like, let's force Georgia to press. We want them to be the ones in the situation where we can possibly create some turnovers, and it worked for them.
Pine Sol Lemon Center on our YouTube comment section also pointing out this is a unit that still hasn't given up a rushing touchdown. And that matters. And obviously against a Kentucky group this week, especially with Lynn Bowden probably at quarterback for most of the game, that's going to be put to the test again. Kentucky's not a great team. I'm not going to try to oversell them and say they are. Bowden may be a great player, though, as a very athletic converted wide receiver at the quarterback position. So I think Pine Sol is right for celebrating the fact that Georgia still hasn't given up a rushing touchdown. And even though Georgia's a big favorite on Saturday, Wildcats have an ability to challenge in that regard. And so it'll be nice to see if Georgia can sort of mark off another game this season where they don't let the other team find the end zone when it comes to its rushing game.
Yeah, and sooner or later that statistic is going to change. They're not going to make it through the entire regular season with 0 rushing touchdowns. But it is a testament to how good they've been playing against the run throughout the field and definitely in the red zone. So there's a lot to be excited about this defense. They seem solid across the board. You like some of the young players that have come in. Nakobe Dean was getting a lot more reps, as is Nolan Smith. I mean, the guy's engine is unmatched. I mean, he's athletic. He plays hard, and that's exciting to see from some of these younger guys.
When you give opinions the way that I do, hundreds of them a day, seemingly on the hours worth of video we seem to do every day, when you do as much as we do, I'm obviously going to be wrong about plenty. And one of the things I was wrong about was the impact of the injuries that Georgia has sustained. Don Williams brings this up on our Facebook comment section. I would have told you when Tyson Campbell went down that I didn't think any individual player on the defense was going to make that much of a difference. But Campbell's injury, I think, has hurt Georgia more than I expected that it would. Getting him back is going to be important. Don doesn't mention on Facebook the offensive line, but you can also add that into it as well where, and this is not excuse making because Kirby Smart rightly said this week, every SEC team's banged up at this time of year. Every team is dealing with this kind of stuff. I guess I am a little bit amazed, maybe the wrong word, but surprised, maybe a better word. I'm surprised the injuries that Georgia has had have impacted as much as they have. Georgia's missed Campbell. The shuffling of the offensive line because of injuries. Now, Kirby's also shuffled it some on his own, but because of the injuries, that's had an impact. Georgia's been hurt more by injuries this year than I would have expected a deep team to have been.
Well, and I think offensive line is a great place to start with this discussion. 8 players rotating in one game, 3 at left guard, 3 at right tackle, 2 at right tackle. That matters. I understand we're more deep than we ever have been in Athens, but let's be honest now. I mean, you have that much turnover. The chemistry is affected. The communication is affected. I understand that Ben Cleveland has been a guy that's rotated in, and that's going to be part of something that it's a recurring theme with Cade Mays at right guard. But when you start with Justin Schaefer and you go to Solomon Kinley and then it's Cade Mays and Jamari Sawyer's rotating in at right guard and right tackle, that absolutely matters. And I think Tyson Campbell on the defense is one of those players that, yes, I think we've got good talent and good depth there, but he's an exceptional player that affects the entire rotation in that secondary.
Mike Mazzell brings up Nolan Smith. Mike says that he should be a starter every game. Here's the thing about that, though. I think the word starter has become a little bit overrated in college football because if you look at Georgia, Nolan's going to be in on every third down situation, unless it's like 3rd and 1. But on every like normal third down situation, Nolan's going to be in the game plenty, and he's going to be in the game in kind of obvious passing situations there as well. Other scenarios, sometimes Georgia only has one outside linebacker in the game. You don't want to take Azeez Ojulari off the field in that spot because I believe that Ojulari has been arguably Georgia's, in the conversation to be Georgia's defensive MVP. He's been, pretty spectacular thus far this year. So Nolan's on the field a lot. I know prior to Saturday there had been some discussion of maybe why he wasn't making more of a statistical impact. I think some of this is just sort of growing into your role as a freshman here in this league. But Nolan has played plenty. I believe he's going to play plenty more. Is he officially listed as a starter? I'm not quite so sure, but he'll play in every series that Georgia has, barring injury.
And in those positions, they're situational, and I think there's some real strategy involved there. So Nolan Smith is a guy that they are utilizing and trying to maximize his skill set. He's not an every down defensive end right now or outside linebacker, depending on the formation that the defense is deploying. But when they're trying to maximize his skills, man. He's a great pass rusher. He's got an unbelievable motor. He's tracking down some of the faster players on any of the offenses that we faced and creating plays on effort alone. But he's not the guy that you want in there first, second, and third. And that's a good thing. I think as much as we just talked about rotation being hurt because of injuries, having the ability to rotate the defensive ends, the defensive tackles, the outside linebackers, bringing in Nakobe Dean in some of the inside space where you need a linebacker that can run. Those are good things for the defense. And the starter, and I mean, there's so much sub personnel and packages being played across the landscape of football these days that it no longer matters who, quote unquote, is the starter.
Ken Feinberg brings up Walter Grant. What about him? And Grant's on the field, and certainly that's a guy that's sort of maybe a slightly different version of Lorenzo Carter. Carter did a lot of things when he was at Georgia. Grant does as well. He's pretty good in pass coverage, for instance. Admittedly, though, in terms of being the impactful outside linebacker, that's not really what Grant's career has become. You go back to Notre Dame in 2017 when he did get after the quarterback that day pretty well, Brandon Wimbush, I remember. We haven't really seen that from him since then. I mean, Grant's a guy that's good enough to play and certainly good enough to do a lot of things for Georgia. But in terms of being an impactful outside linebacker, that's not really what his career has become. And coming out of Cairo, admittedly, I probably thought he'd be doing a little bit more.
And that's not the situations that they've asked him to excel in. I mean, he hasn't been the third down pass rusher. That role has fallen to Nolan Smith and Azeez Ojulari and Adam Anderson off the edge. So that he hasn't had the same level of opportunity to create those pass rushing plays that some of the other guys have. They've liked him more in space, I guess.
Jim Withrow, we're going to get ready to wrap up after this. He uses a very interesting phrase. He says, who are the tone setters going to be? I love that phrase because Georgia does need a new tone, whether it be on offense or defense or guys making contributions in special teams, more than just playing well in such a way that it provides coattails for other people to follow. John, you know this team well. You've watched it closely. If I gave you your choice of either side of the ball right now, from anyone on this roster, who do you think the tone is going to be set by? Is it set by Fromm having a better game? Is it set by DeAndre Swift continuing the leadership that he showed this week when he spoke to the media? Who sets the tone coming off of what is obviously a game on Saturday which showed you that the tone going into the game wasn't quite right?
Well, on offense, I'm going to give it to a group. I think the tone needs to be set by the offensive line. I think they're the ones.
Imagine John Stinchcomb saying that.
Weird.
Imagine.
Weird that you tee it up like that, B.A. Specialty guys. Come on, man. No, it's that the offensive line is the tone setter. They're the bell cow of this offense. They're the ones who are creating the holes for DeAndre and allowing Jake to peruse the entire secondary and find the third and fourth wide receiver, which You heard me on Monday, especially in the second half, the offensive line had their struggles. But watching the film again, they also provided a lot of plays where there was good protection. So it wasn't all bad. They're the tone setter on offense. On defense, hopefully there are situations where your outside linebackers, I'd love to see Azeez Ojulari and J.R. Reed are your two tone setters on defense.
Our buddy Chad Cahill on YouTube is pretty clearly fired up for the game on Saturday. He is obviously ready to go, and I know many of you there are as well. And, we'll finish with this. We talked about it this week on our program. The audio is kind of leaked out of Kirby Smart with Chuck Down on the radio pregame broadcast saying that he thought his team needed to get ready to play, did not like the energy with which they were going in warm-ups. I guess you're just sort of there sometimes when you show up at the stadium, you realize, man, we just can't seem to quite get buckled up the right way and buttoned down the right way. And my guess is one way or another, whatever happened last Saturday will be in the past come 6 p.m. on Saturday, and we will see a more focused and intense version of Georgia. And hopefully whatever the Dog Show on Saturday, they're able to carry through there for the rest of the season as well.
You know who I blame? I blame Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt used to be this game, basically.
That's
South Carolina was early in the season, and they're talented. They're one of those dangerous teams. They've got enough playmakers where it's a problem if you don't play your best. No offense to Vandy, but they usually fall at some point in this time of the year where they're sandwiched between other threats that you're more aware of. And back in the day, Tennessee and Florida, and Vandy sandwiched in the middle, we didn't really wake up till halftime. But
Yep.
Vandy didn't have the same horses that South Carolina does, and you ended up winning by 21 at the end of the game. Well, South Carolina, you can't play that game. And that's the way I think it played out on Saturday. It was a midseason Vanderbilt-type game, but you're going up against a much better veteran, threatening, dangerous opponent like South Carolina, and it bit them.
That is well said by John Stinchcomb. We're going to get off the air and enjoy some of this chef-inspired food and craft cocktails here at the Marlow's Tavern in Dunwoody in this beautiful patio weather we have tonight. And by the way, as I said before, if you want to experience it for yourself, this Saturday a great time to do it. The Dunwoody Community Tailgate, Marlow's Tavern, kind of teaming up with some of its neighbors here to host this great event from 1 p.m. to 11 p.m., outdoors, indoors, rain or shine. It's going to be the whole thing as I just knocked our hover helmet here, knocked that off track. You can be here. You can enjoy all of that. Listen to some of the food offerings they have coming up this weekend. How about Rosewood Farms Wagyu beef hot dog? That is a very fancy menu offering. I don't know that I pronounce. Is it Wagyu or Wagyu? I never know quite how to say that. Is it Wagyu? Wagyu. They've also got the Mexican-style street corn, which sounds amazing. Just some really good. The pulled pork sandwich, which I have had here. They have that sometimes special for me when I'm here. So really, really good stuff. The chef-inspired menu being celebrated and enjoyed outdoors on Saturday as part of our really fun Dunwoody Community Tailgate hosted by Marlow's Tavern, some of the neighbors here in the Dunwoody Village Shopping Center. By the way, you see the hover helmet. I kind of knocked this thing off its orbit there for a moment, but you can go to hoverhelmets.com and take advantage of one of these yourself there. You can use the promo code DOGNATION. You can get big savings. They have these back on stock. Again, I know for a while you're trying to get one and they were kind of sold out. Well, they've gotten restocked and reordered. They're taking your orders on that now. So go to hoverhelmets.com. Make sure you use the promo code DOGNATION for savings there on that, courtesy of our friends at Hover Helmets for everyone who's watching the Marlow's matchup here tonight. I'll see you tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. for Dog Nation Daily. Look forward to talking to you then around Athens on Saturday for the big one between the Dogs and Kentucky Wildcats. And they're expecting rain on Saturday. Have you heard this?
So I've heard. So I think that changes the game a little bit, too. So,
certainly changes the viewing experience.
Yeah, I'm supposed to take my 9-year-old. He's going to be thrilled.
All right, y'all enjoy the night. For those of you here, we'll get ready to do a fun Q&A with all of you, and we'll see you at Marlow's Tavern close to you very soon right there in your neighborhood. Thanks for being with us here each and every Thursday as a part of our Marlow's matchup. Y'all have a great night, everybody.